that as we step into relationship with Jesus and follow him with everything that we have, that it will lead us into a life of incredible adventures. A life that just doesn't fit in with what the rest of the world looks like, but boldly steps out into showing the light of Jesus into our community. And this week we're looking at the second value, which is encounter. What does it look like for us as Soul City to encounter Jesus personally, as a church community? And what does it look like to lead Stockport into an encounter with Jesus too? Many times in life we can remember those moments that we've had big encounters. Maybe it was the moment that on your first day of school you met your best friend, or the moment that you first met your partner. I remember very clearly the first time I met my wife Ruth. It was at church, and we were at this kind of like big church gathering from like churches from like around Manchester. And it was a classic Christian meeting. There was like a spread of different cakes. And as we're there, I notice the top tier of cake for any meeting, a lemon drizzle cake. It is the top tier. It's got the sweet, it's got the tart, it's got the sugar on top. You cannot beat a lemon drizzle cake. And that day, I possibly ate the best lemon drizzle cake of my entire life. And so I was asking people like, who made this cake? I need to meet them. I need to find out their secret. And someone pointed to Ruth. And as soon as I saw her, I knew she was the one for me, right? And so that one encounter I had with a good piece of cake literally changed my life. And so if you get anything from me speaking today, just remember, cake can change your life. But encounters are a big deal, right? They can change life trajectories, mold us and lead us into new paths. And especially when we encounter God, it can completely change everything. And when you read the Bible, it's full of people who had amazing encounters with God. Moses met God in a burning bush. Saul meets Jesus on the road to Damascus. And Jacob even wrestles with God. And while I may not have had a moment where I'm walking through Stockport and suddenly a fiery bush starts talking to me, I can think back clearly and remember my first encounters with God. In a damp tent at a Christian festival in Devon, encountering God in the most simple but amazing way that changed the course of my life. And right now, you might be thinking back to your first encounter with God. It might have been through someone else. It could have been just by looking at nature and the beauty of it and being convinced that there must be a creator behind it. It might have been through reading the Bible or hearing a preach or someone's testimony. Each one of us who've decided to follow Jesus in this room have had an encounter with the living God that has made us want to stop, reevaluate our whole lives, reevaluate what we're doing, and stop and redirect our lives to following him. We encounter new situations, people, places every day, but only an encounter with God can truly change us, truly save us, and truly give us a purpose to this life. An encounter in a moment can set us free from addiction, heal us from sickness, and see miracles happen in our lives. An encounter with God will change everything if we let it. If we let God work on our hearts, if we allow him to shape our thinking, it will radically transform our lives. And the first thing I really want us to think about this morning is, what do our personal encounters with Jesus look like? In the normal and everyday, how do I encounter him for myself? And firstly, I think what's really important is that our encounters with Jesus must be regular. You see, an initial encounter with God might change our lives. It might be the moment we are transformed into a new creation, as it says in 2 Corinthians. But an encounter with God cannot be a single moment of our lives. It can't be just something that happens once and we live off that moment for the rest of our lives. An encounter with God might change us forever in a moment, but we need to keep coming back to him, to encounter him regularly, time and time again, to keep our focus straight, to be refreshed, and to keep running this race with perseverance. We need continual encounters with God. Romans chapter 12 tells us that in order to not conform to the patterns of this world. In other words, so that we don't fall into just looking like everyone else around us in the way that the world talks and acts, that we need to renew our mind. We need to refresh it, to remind ourselves who we're following and letting God transform us into a new person. Time and time again, we need to come to God for refreshments, to remind ourselves who we follow. Moses had his initial encounter with God in a burning bush, but he needed to continually come back to God for guidance, for help, and so that he could keep down the path that God was leading him down. Paul had his initial dramatic conversion to follow Jesus on the road to Damascus, but yet he still encourages us to rejoice always and to pray continually. To pray continually. To not stop, but keep going in our relationship with God. To keep pursuing him in prayer. We must keep our personal encounters with God regular, because if we don't, we'll be so easily swayed by this world. Swayed by our own desires and swayed down into a path that we were never supposed to go down. We must pursue our relationship with him. If I had met Ruth once in that incredible lemon drizzle cake encounter, but didn't pursue it anymore, she'd just be that person who once made some pretty good cake. But because I met her and saw how amazing she was, I wanted to keep getting to know her, and I wanted to pursue that relationship. And if we call ourselves followers of Jesus, guess what? We actually need to follow him. We need to pursue him. It talks about in James how if we draw near to God, that he will draw near to us. When was your last encounter with God? Do you spend time with him every day, reading his word, praying, and just being with him? And yes, not every encounter we have with God will be an incredible thundering voice from the clouds, but as we faithfully and continually spend time seeking after him, building on the relationship and going after him, guess what? He will draw near to you. He will draw near to us. Like, how incredible is that we can be in relationship with the creator of the universe? And I'm not going to stand up here today and pretend that I'm great at this. I'll be honest, I struggle in the busyness of life to always find that time to sit down and spend intentional time seeking after God. But when I do that, when I skip spending time with him because I prioritize other things, it's me missing out. Missing out on going deeper in relationship with my Heavenly Father. It's me missing out on the amazing things that God might be leading me into. It's me missing out on the guidance and support I need from the best person I could ever get it from. Don't miss out on an encounter from God. Every single day, we have the privilege to encounter him afresh. But how do we do that? And what's really important is that our encounters with God, they need to be regular, but they need to also be rooted in the Bible. We cannot pursue Jesus properly if we are not rooted in his word and letting it feed into our lives, shaping us and molding us. We just talked about King Charles's coronation, but when our late Queen was coronated back in June 1953, there was a moment where the Queen was presented with a Bible by the Archbishop. And as he handed the Bible to her, he said this, that we present you with this book, the most valuable thing that the world affords. Here is wisdom. This is the royal law. These are the lively oracles of God. I love that. These are the lively oracles of God. The Bible isn't some book that is old, dead, irrelevant piece of history. No, in this book are the very things that can give us life. And so when the world comes at us trying to sway us or change our course, we can come back to the Bible as our source of truth and source of life. And we can say to the world, look, I'm not going to go that way because I know the truth that is written in the Word. I know what my God says, and I'm going to stick to that path that he is leading me down. I love what it says in Psalm 1, verses 1 to 3. Oh, the joys of those who do not follow the advice of the wicked, or stand around with sinners, or join in with mockers, but they delight in the law of the Lord, meditating on it day and night. They are like trees planted along the riverbank, bearing fruit each season. Their leaves never wither, and they prosper in all they do. Our encounters with God need to be regular, and they need to be based in His Word. And if you're sitting here and you're struggling where to start reading the Bible, I've got 2 apps that actually I found really helpful in my walk with God. They're such a great place to start, to kind of start reading a bit of scripture and having a bit of time in prayer. They're quick 10 minutes things, and one of them, you might be already using it, but Lectio 365 by the guys at 24/7 Prayer, I would really recommend to you. And there's another app I've just started using called Glorify, and it's a similar sort of thing, but it leads you through scripture every day, a bit of meditating and a bit of prayer. And if you're struggling where to start in just spending that regular time with Jesus, I'd encourage you to take a look at one of those. Our personal encounter with Jesus is essential, because as we go deeper into encountering Him for ourselves, it will draw others to want to experience an encounter with Jesus for themselves too. As we encounter God in our quiet time, it has a knock-on effect where the people around us will, as a result of my time with God, want to be drawn into that. It spreads to the community around me. It doesn't stay just within me. It's not just me that encounters God when I spend time seeking after Him, but actually it leads to the fact that Soul City will encounter Him too. Our church community will encounter Him too. Personal encounter leads to community encounter. There's something about encountering something for ourselves that leads us to wanting others to encounter that too. There's this burrito restaurant in the centre of Manchester called Liquor and Burn. I don't know if anyone's been to it before. It is the most incredible place. I went there for around 10 years ago for someone's birthday, and that restaurant experience was so influential in my life that ever since I've been drawing everyone I can to experience it for themselves. They create the most incredible burritos and bacon-wrapped jalapenos you could ever have. If anyone asks me for a restaurant recommendation, that's where I point them. On my first date with Ruth, that's where I took her, because I realized that if she was going to be part of my life, then she needed to experience that place for herself. And if she didn't like it there would be serious questions about our future together. Fortunately, she did like it, and our relationship could resume. But when we encounter something life-changing, like a burrito, we want to bring others into that encounter too. Jesus, when he's asked what the most important commandment is, he responds by saying this: "Listen, O Israel, the Lord our God is the one and only Lord, and you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, or your soul, or your mind, or your strength." The second is equally important: love your neighbor as yourself. No other commandment is greater than these. As we pursue God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, in other words, as we love and pursue him with everything that we have, it doesn't just stay within us, but the natural outworking is that we'll want others to experience that love too. Our God is one who loves community. We hear in Genesis, when God is creating and forming the planet, that he creates light and it's good. He creates land, sea, and sky, and it is good. He creates trees, plants, and animals, and they too are good. The only thing in the whole creation story that is not good is for man to be alone. We're meant for community. And so, as we draw closer to God, he'll give us a heart to want to draw others into an encounter with him too. He'll give us a heart to draw others into the community that we can have with Jesus. It's one of Soul City's other values that we would be a people united together, that we are a family with a common mission and purpose. There is something so important about gathering together as God's people, praying, seeking, and worshipping him together. Jesus tells us in Matthew 18:20, "For where 2 or 3 gather together as my followers, I am there among them." Guess what? Jesus is among us today as we gather to seek to encounter him. There is something, I think, that happens when we do that. There's something, I think, that happens as we seek God together as a community. And I think what it does is it creates among us expectancy and faith for him to move. Romans 12:11-12 says to never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervour, serve in the Lord, be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, and faithful in prayer. And the Message version paraphrases it like this: don't burn out, keep yourselves fueled and aflame, be alert servants of the Master, cheerfully expectant. Don't quit in hard times, pray all the harder. As we share life as a community, as a family, we will go through great times and we will go through tough ones too. But we do it together. And when one of us is struggling, we don't quit on them or leave them to deal with it on our own, but we support them and we pray alongside them. We draw them into a place where together we can encounter God. And together we can be expectant for him to move in this situation. Or in the NIV version, as I read earlier, puts it like this, that we can be joyful in hope. Because the hope that we have is not human optimism or wishful thinking, but because it's a hope that is real and secure and can bring us life. And this is so in contrast to what the world puts its hope in and what the world is expectant for. And something that has become popular over the last few years is this idea of manifesting. If you don't know what this is, manifesting is the practice of thinking aspirational thoughts with the purpose of making them real. It's the idea that if I want something in this life, I can just think of it and wish for it and kind of manifest it to make it happen. I was reading one article which said this: manifesting feels like a way to accomplish something we have control over in a time when we're mostly powerless to affect any real change. Our world is looking for something more than what they see around them, but they're looking in the wrong place. As Christians, we don't manifest things into being, but as we encounter God as a Soul City community, it creates in us expectancy for him to move in powerful ways. Not because of anything we can do, not because of our own wishful thinking, but because we're in a relationship with a God who can actually do it. As we seek after encounter with God, it raises our faith levels and we can be expectant for him to move. And the thing is, with manifesting is that people are chasing after things for themselves. They're chasing after fame, fortune. They're chasing after significance in their lives. They're wishing for miracles and signs and hoping by doing so that they will somehow suddenly appear from nowhere. But the difference is for us is that we're not chasing after any of those things. We're simply chasing after Jesus first and foremost. And it's when we chase after him with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength that he will stir within us expectancy for miracles, for signs and wonders, for provision in our lives. But we don't chase after those things first. First, we seek after Jesus. Really, our aim as a church is to seek after God first and help lead each other into seeking him too. But what does that look like for us as a church? How can we help each other seek out encounter with Jesus? And the first thing I would really encourage you to get involved with is a small group. Each week we gather in people's homes and online to spend time together in community, but also to seek out encounter with Jesus. These are great places to journey together through tough and good times, to celebrate with each other and to cry with one another too. And within it all, encourage each other to encounter Jesus through it. If you'd like to be part of a small group, please come and chat to Ben. I'm sure he'd love to point you in the direction of one near you. The second way we can help each other seek out encounter with Jesus is by joining a team. There are loads of great ways you can get involved with Soul City, whether it's kids work, welcome team, worship, youth work, sound, or maybe even leading a small group. When we get involved in the life of the church, we use our gifts and our abilities to help others encounter Jesus. So if you're on the worship team, you're helping bring others into a space where they can worship God for themselves. If you help with kids, you're passing on what God has done in your life and helping lead children into experiencing God for themselves. If you're on welcome team, you're showing the heart of hospitality that God gives us, and you're extending his love to others so that they might feel welcomed into his family too. So again, if you'd like to get involved in the team, I'm sure Ben and Emma will be more than happy to have you on the team. And another way we can help seek out Jesus together is through something Ben was talking about last week, which is finding a soul friend. A soul friend is someone who you could meet with at least once a month and who you are giving permission to speak into your life, to go a little bit deeper with, to ask some of those more difficult questions in life, to ask, what is God saying to you? How is God moving in your life? How is your personal encounter with Jesus going? Is someone who you can be accountable with and to encourage encounter with Jesus together. And I'd recommend this not being your partner, but being someone else within the church. And this is an intentional thing. Sometimes I think we hope it'll happen naturally. But maybe think, who is there that I could go a little bit deeper with and ask if they would be up for doing the same? Our personal encounters with God helps draw in our church community, Soul City, to encounter him. And as Soul City seek him with everything that we have, it has a wider knock-on effect where Stockport encounters him too. I don't know about you, but my heart is to see this town transformed for God. I want to see my neighbours encounter him. I want to see the people I meet in the shop or in the pub encounter him. I want to see those in positions of power in this town meet with him personally. You see, as we encounter God personally and as a church community, we were never meant to keep that to ourselves. Encounter with God is something we need to take outside of this room, outside of our comfy cinema seats, outside of our small groups and our church meetings. We encounter him so that in turn, we can bring others who have never encountered him before into an understanding of who he is and in the hope that they may choose to follow him for themselves. But this requires us to step out, to not get comfortable in where we're sat, but to be active in reaching others for Jesus. You might have read the booklet that was given out last week and this week as well, talking about what we're about as Soul City. And in it tells us of a recent study that 1 in 3 people in the UK are interested in exploring faith and who Jesus is. However, the same study said that most of those people did not have a friend who was a Christian. People are more hungry than we often think to find Jesus. They just don't know how to do it. And they haven't found anyone who can help introduce them to him. We as a church community want to be that place. We want to be that community inviting people into a life that truly matters. On a really basic level, is saying to others, look, follow me as I follow Christ. I love this story about George Muller towards the end of his life when he goes preaching around the world. Now, if you don't know who George Muller is, he was born in the 1800s and is probably most famous for the orphanages he set up in Bristol. This was a time when it was estimated there were over 250,000 orphans in the UK. And George wanted to set up a safe place for them where they could be fed, educated, learn more about God. And during his lifetime, he looked after over 10,000 orphans. But towards the end of his life, he decided he wasn't going to retire, but at the age of 71, George Muller decides to travel the world to tell others about Jesus. And over the next 17 years, he travels over 200,000 miles, visiting more than 30 countries. And there's this story of one time that George Muller was trying to get to Quebec in Canada, but the ship that he was on to get there was surrounded in fog. And the captain of the ship tells this amazing story. He says this: "We had a man of God on board, George Muller of Bristol. I had been on the bridge for 22 hours and never left it. I was startled by someone tapping me on the shoulder. It was George Muller. Captain," he said, "I have come to tell you that I must be in Quebec on Saturday afternoon." This was Wednesday. It is impossible," I said. George Muller replied, "Very well, if your ship can't take me, God will find some other means of locomotion to take me. I have never broken an engagement in 57 years. I said to him, I would willingly help you, but how can I? I am helpless. Let us go down to the chart room and pray," he said. I looked at this man and I thought to myself, what lunatic asylum could this man have come from? I have never heard of such a thing. "Mr. Muller," I said, "do you know how dense this fog is?" No, he replied. My eye is not on the density of the fog, but on the living God who controls every circumstance of my life. He went down on his knees and he prayed one of the most simple prayers. I thought to myself, that would suit a children's class, where the children were not more than 8 or 9 years of age. The burden of his prayer was something like this. Oh Lord, if it is consistent with thy will, please remove this fog in 5 minutes. You know the engagement you made for me in Quebec for Saturday. I believe it is your will. When he had finished, I was going to pray, but he put his hand on my shoulder and told me not to pray. First he said, you do not believe God will do it. And second, I believe he has done it. And there is no need whatever for you to pray about it. I looked at him and George Muller said this, Captain, I've known my Lord for 57 years and there has never been a single day that I failed to gain an audience with the king. Get up, Captain, and open the door and you will find the fog is gone. I got up and the fog was gone, and on Saturday afternoon, George Muller was in Quebec. I love 2 things about this story. Firstly, because of his personal encounter with Jesus on a regular basis, George Muller was expectant for a miracle to happen. He had faith for it. Earlier on in his life, when he first came to know Jesus, he said this thing that for the first 4 years of my conversion, I progressed nothing in my faith because I didn't spend every day spending time with him. But the moment that I did that, everything changed. And I love that. He's through his whole life, regular time with Jesus changed everything in his life. He was expectant for God to move within it. But also, what strikes me about this is that George Muller could have just gone and prayed on his own, and I'm sure God would have done the miracle. But what he does is he draws in the captain who didn't have faith to encounter God too. He brings someone else on his faith journey. And the captain later says that it was this experience that led him to give his life to Jesus. I love the simplicity of that. That as we pursue Jesus for ourselves, that others can be brought on that journey, on that adventure with us. As we follow him, we bring in others to find the same freedom, life, and purpose that we have. Sometimes I think we want to overcomplicate it with having the right words to say or know exactly how to evangelize to people. But sometimes it's just saying, follow me as I follow Christ. Just look what God has done in my life. He can do that in yours too. And my challenge to you is this, is what would it look like for you this week to draw someone else in that adventure? It might be offering to pray for a colleague. It could be sharing your testimony with someone, or even walking up to someone during your shop and telling them that God loves them. We are surrounded by moments where we can bring others into encounter with God every single day. We just have a choice whether we take action on them or leave it because of the way it might make us look to others or how people might think of us. How can you step out this week? But within it all comes down back to that personal encounter we have with God. That personal encounter we have with Jesus on a regular basis is the catalyst for others meeting with him too. And you may be sitting there and I've never actually encountered God for yourself. You've heard about him and you've seen others experience him, but other than that, it's just theory. And this morning, I want to invite you to encounter God for yourself, to encounter the God who loves you with an unconditional love, which means you can never earn God's love, but you can never unearn it either. He loves you full stop. But we've all messed up, right? And the Bible calls the mess in our lives sin. And sin is just when we've decided to live life for ourselves, to make choices that benefit us rather than others. We are all sinful people. We have all made mistakes. And the thing is with sin is it bogs us down and it actually separates us from God, because God, being perfect, cannot be near sin, which is imperfect. And so he sent a solution down to us. That actually, he loved us so much, he sent his son Jesus down to earth. And Jesus, he comes to earth, he lives a perfect life, tells some incredible stories, but the most amazing thing he does is he dies on a cross to take the punishment for the things that we've done wrong, and so we can be reconnected with God, and so we can actually have a personal encounter with the living God. And 3 days later, he rises from the dead, proving not only that he was God, but if we put our faith and trust in him, we can live life to the full. life to the absolute max. But we have a choice to make, whether to keep going along our path, living life for ourselves, or to stop and redirect our lives, to choose to have an encounter with God. And I'm going to do something, and if that's you, if you've never had a personal encounter with God before, I want to encourage you to be really brave, and as a declaration of saying, you know what, yes, I want to put my trust in him. I want you to do something really simple and just put your hand up in the air. I can wait a few moments. I don't care about it being awkward. But if that's you, if you know, actually, yeah, you know what, I'm tired of living life for myself. I want to put my faith and trust in Jesus. Why don't you stick your hand up? Cool. And if that's you, or if you said that in your heart, I'm just going to encourage all of us to pray a prayer together. And whether you've prayed this for the first time or for the 1,000th time, let this be a declaration of once again saying, yes, God, I'm going to intentionally pursue after you. Why don't you say this after me? Dear Jesus. Wow, that was pathetic. Dear Jesus, thank you that you love me. I'm sorry I've messed up. Thank you that you died for me and rose again. Today, I choose to live for you. Amen. And that's amazing. If that was your first time making that decision, please come and chat to us. Please come and chat to Ben, Emma. We'd love to point you in the direction of where you could go next. But the other type of response I want to do, just really, really quickly, is for those who know that their personal encounter with Jesus is lacking, that they need to go back into his word, spending regular time praying and seeking after him. And I'm not going to make you come to the front or anything. You know if that's you. And in this moment, I want you just to pray in your heart, to ask forgiveness to God for where you've neglected time for him, and once again, recommitting to spend time seeking after him on a regular basis. Let me pray. Lord Jesus, thank you that you do love us. God, thank you that you want encounter with us, God. And I pray you would forgive me, and you would forgive us here as well, where we have neglected that time with you, where we have just prioritized other things and chosen other things having more importance in our lives. Once again, God, we say you are the most important thing in our lives, and we seek after encounter for you. Not only for ourselves, but so our neighbors, our friends and family, that they might be able to encounter you too. Amen.